Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. Today's video, we're going to visit the Lumineth Realm Lords, and we're going to do a getting started with video. So we're going to look at how we can get into the Lumineth Realm Lords army, and in particular, we're going to look at one particular part of the army today, and that is the Vanari of the Lumineth Realm Lords. We'll be looking at all the different parts of the Lumineth Realm Lords in various videos for Warhammer Age of Sigmar 3rd edition, but today we're going to start with Vanari, which is by far the most expansive part of the Lumineth Realm Lords range. The Vanari is like sort of the core sort of troops. They're the state troops, your general sort of civilians turned into warriors group. And some of your more generic things that are in there as well. Things like your Vanari Orlan Wardens and Sentinels and Dawn Riders, as well as your Blade Lords and your Bolt Throwers as well. All of that falls under Vanari. Now, Vanari, let's talk a little bit about what exactly we get from this force, and then we'll go look at how we can start it, what units we can bring into that, and then a little sample army list at the end. So to start off with, let's talk about what we can do with Vanari. It's a versatile all-round force. As you just heard me say, three very different units right off the bat there. We've got Vanari Orlan Wardens, which are a great offensive or defensive melee troop. We've also got Sentinels, which are one of the best, if not the best, shooting unit in the game, with their ability to project mortal wounds all across the table. And then we've also got Dawn Riders as well, which are a great fast-moving cavalry unit that can actually hit quite hard against sort of hordes. So we've got things here with mortal wound output, like our Sentinels that can deal with high sort of tough threats where we're fighting like big things that can deal with that. And then we've also got Dawn Riders, which will clear out chaff with relative ease. The army in general, being Lumineth Realm Lords, is quite elite in number. So you're not going to get a lot of models on the table, but with the units you do get generally are quite strong. Now, when I say strong, I do mean offensively. Defensively, Lumineth Realm Lords can be found lacking, and you need to play smartly with this army, otherwise you can get taken off the table quite easily. Shining Company is a great defensive benefit, -1 to hit. However, you've got to remember that you can't stack any debuffs above that, and it's quite easy to get +1 to hit to sort of revert that and not have any effect. Magic and mortal wounds are plenty though is in this army. As mentioned, Sentinels do mortal wounds and the Wardens do as well in combat, as do the Dawn Riders, so you've got a ton of mortal wound potential with the sun metal weapons that you get throughout the army. Magic is another great one, as nearly all the Vanari units are wizards themselves, which is awesome. This means you've just got a ton of access to spells, and you've especially got the amazing Power of Haiish spell, which your three core Vanari units have, which enables them to do mortal wounds on 5s to hit instead of 6s. Add into this the other sort of characters we can bring in, the ones that are wizards as well, like the Lord Regent and stuff like that. You've got a great sort of force to build around. But let's look at exactly how we can start this Vanari force. For starters, I don't think there's any place better to look than a Vanari Lord Regent. He's a fantastic character to start out your army. First of all, he is probably your main sort of character. He's got this really cool mount here, and it does come with a named character variation called Lirio Ulthrale. I've probably absolutely butchered that name. Now, both of them have a pretty decent move, with the generic one having a 14-inch move and Lirio having a 16-inch move, both on that 3-up save, which is really, really nice, meaning they can go to that all-important 2-up. They've got the ability to be a wizard as well, casting and dispelling 1. They've got some okay attacks. Generally, I find that the Vanari Lord Regent actually puts out a little bit more than Lirio does, but we've also got the thing with the Purest 8th Quartz rule as well, where we subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks that target this model as if he was in Shining Company, and then you add 1 to the casting roll when it attempts to cast the greater power of Haiish. If this model is part of a Lumineth Realm Lord's army and uses the last 8th Quartz reserve, this ability cannot be used for the rest of the battle. So effectively, while he's got his Lumineth special ability 8th Quartz reserves on him, he gets some extra bonus abilities. Greater Power Haiish is one of the coolest spells I think that we have for the Lumineth Realm Lords, especially when starting a Vanari army. It's really cool. What it effectively does, it allows you to cast the Power of Haiish on multiple units around him, 3 in fact, or D3 rather. This allows him to affect multiple units. Now, the two units I recommend starting with, first of all, definitely there's no, other option than having to pick up a box of Vanari Orlan Wardens. This is the only actual true battle line unit, unless we start going into sub-factions and getting some battle line unlocked that way, or generals, etc. But Vanari Orlan Wardens have a really cool and unique way that they unlock other battle line units for you. For every Vanari Orlan Warden you take as a unit in your army as battle line, you get one other Vanari Orlan Sentinel or Vanari Orlan Dawn Rider unit as battle line as well. So 1 for 1 effectively. But Wardens are pretty cool. First of all, they've got these amazingly long pikes. That gives them a 3-inch range, which is really cool. This makes them great when fighting in larger units, as they're not affected by the sort of new cohesion rules all that much. A 4-up base save is really nice as well, especially with the easy access to +1, putting them down to that 3-up. They've got their own small power of Haish, and they do have sun metal weapons, meaning they get the mortal wounds. In addition, the Moonfire Flask from the unit champion can do some more mortal wounds once per game. You've got the Wall of Blades, where they actually get to add 1 to the wound rolls and improve their rend characteristic by 1 if they're charged. So they can be great on the defense and great on the offense. Vanari Orlan Sentinels are probably what I suggest over Dawn Riders as your first other battle line unit, mainly because they're just going to teach you a little bit more about the game to start with. First of all, they're going to teach you what shooting is. I mean, they're going to teach you Sentinel shooting, but they're going to teach you shooting at least. Sentinels are just absolutely amazing. They pack out mortal wounds at a range, they ignore line of sight thanks to the cool little bird on the champion. Worth noting as well that that champion does not get access to a bow, so you actually only get 9 bows in the unit, not 10. But a really solid unit, one of the best, if not the best, shooting unit in the game. But now that we've talked about where we can start with these 3 boxes, let's look at how we can expand our force. And so, I've talked a little bit about them already. Vanari Dawn Riders are definitely a unit to look at when you start expanding your army. First of all, move 14. This is really cool. When you power this up with some of the spells that allow you to double the move, the ability to move 28 inches in a turn is pretty sweet. Plus, you can charge on top of that. You've also got the ability where your unit actually gets better when fighting hordes. So what this does is you've got the Deathly Furrows ability, where you can either add 1 to the attack characteristic for the unit's melee weapons, but can only target units that have a wounds characteristic of 1 or 2, or they can add 2 to their attacks, but can only target a unit that has a wounds characteristic of 1. So effectively, the smaller the unit is, these cavalry just sort of plow them down. It's pretty cool sort of thematic rule that actually gives them a really good purpose on the table. Lance to the Dawn also gives them an additional +1 to wound and additional point of rend when they charge, which is pretty sweet. And they've obviously got sun metal weapons, and once again the power of Haish, enabling them to do mortal wounds on 5s. With a decent amount of attacks throughout the unit, let's not forget as well that we actually get extra attacks on a bunch of different things for the unit is really cool and just a really useful unit. And while we're talking about other Vanari units, we might as well talk about the Star Shard Ballista as well, which is another cool alternate sort of shooting unit. It's a little bit more survivable than, say, Sentinels, as it's sort of a 1 model unit. Your opponent has to sort of focus on it a little bit more before it drops. You know, it needs to be taken off the table completely for it to lose any of its ability to shoot. But in general, it is maybe a little bit less good than Sentinels. Now, Vanari is something that, I guess, it's not actually Vanari, but definitely it works well alongside them. Vanari is sort of the wizard cast of the Lumineth Realm, these specific wizards. So you've got things like the Lore Seeker, the Caligrave, and the Cathalar as well, which are all fantastic wizards in their own right. The Lore Seeker is really cool. He's a great little solo hero. The Caligrave has some cool, unique rules. And then we've got the Cathalar, which I think is one of the best models in the army, as it's got a really unique rule where it can sort of flip your own Battleshock tests and put that fear into your opponent's units and actually make them take your Battleshock tests. So when you're really up against it, having to take some really bad Battleshock tests, as long as your opponent's units actually have to take a Battleshock test as well, it works really well, and sort of putting that test on them, and all of a sudden they're at like -12 and they're fleeing off the table. It can be a really cool, interesting ability. Along with those scenarios though, you might be thinking about maybe bringing some Vanari Blade Lords. This is a unit that gets a Guardian rule where they effectively can be bodyguards for any of your Scenari Wizards. You also get to take some of these as battle line if you bring along Scenari Wizards as well. They don't have the sun metal weapons, but they do have some cool things like Perfect Strike, where they get a Rend 2 damage 1 attack, or a Flurry of Blows, where they get an amount of attacks equal to the amount of models in range of each of them. So some pretty cool. The last thing I want to talk about as well is other Vanari characters, things like the Bannerblade, There's some really cool other Vanari characters in there. Obviously the Lord Regent, and we've talked about Lyrior as well already, but the Bannerblade is the other main one. He gives some cool things where he's got the ability to add some bravery to your Lumineth units around him, and also do some mortal wounds potentially as well. But in general, this is some great sort of units to add into your Vanari force. Definitely want to add in some more Vanari stuff, and then Scenari is a great complement to this force. And so now I want to talk about a little sample army list we put together, 750 point army to get you started with your Lumineth Realm Lords. So for starters, we're going to play in the great nation of Siar. Siar is really interesting or Sire, however you want to pronounce it. I'm probably butchering it one way or the other, but for me, this is a really fun one and a great one to actually learn Lumineth Realm Lords with. So the reason I like this one more than the others, especially to learn, is it gives you more of the thing that makes Lumineth a little bit unique in their Aether Quartz. Sire units get an extra Aether Quartz per unit, so this is just cool. It allows you to learn a little bit more and see what different things do throughout the games when you're playing those first sort of starting armies. And it's pretty cool and good as well. Now we've gone for the grand strategy prize sorcery as well, because we've got a ton of wizards in the army, so they all need to die. So if we've lost all our wizards, we've actually lost our whole army, so I think this is a pretty solid one. Inspired is really cool as well as a triumph to potentially get. We are 15 points under, so there's potential to get it. But what Inspired does is it enables us to get +1 to wound. +1 to hit is really common to come by, but +1 to wound is much harder to find. So we've got our Vanari Lord Regent. He's going to be our general and take the command trait and artifact that he has to take as being part of this particular sub-faction. They're okay. Perfect Blade gives him, he always hits on a 3, but he can never get better or worse than that. And then he's got Goading Arrogance, where he can sort of tempt an opponent's unit, hero unit to actually have to fight him. So an opponent's hero can only target him, which could be pretty cool. If they don't have that much rend, you could use this and then easily use something like All Out Defense to put him on a 2-up, so he's really going to be hard to take down. Now, spell on him, we've gone for Protection of Haish, which is a cool little 9-inch bubble around him of a 5-up ward. And then we've got a Scenari Cathalar as well. We just talked about them, the models that can flip Battleshock tests back on your opponent. And we've also gone Protection of Haish here. The reason why we've gone for this is contingencies are really good with spell casters. And not only that, but both their War Scroll spells are really useful. We've also got the multiple ability to cast D3 Power of Haishes from the Vanari Lord Regent here. So he's less likely to be using Protection of Haish, and it's more likely to be the Cathalar. Though the Vanari Lord Regent, obviously if he sort of goes out ahead with those Dawn Riders, could easily use that as well. For our battle line units, we've got a 10-man unit of Wardens, 10-man unit of Sentinels, and a 5-man unit of Dawn Riders. Now, both the Wardens and the Dawn Riders have Speed of Haish, which effectively doubles their movement. This should seem pretty basic of why it's good on Dawn Riders, doubling that move to make that the 28-inch move. And then obviously Wardens, this helps them get into position a lot better. Because if we are going to be fighting in Shining Company, we can't actually charge or do anything to get out of that. So we're going to need that ability to sort of just move up the table and plant where we want to be. Lastly, we've gone for Lambent Light on the Sentinels. This allows them to pick a unit. If there's anyone within 18 inch of them, they can cast Lambent Light on them and actually get rerolls to hit against it. Really, really solid. All of this is wrapped up into a battle regiment, which is a 1-drop battalion. When the army drops as 1, you've got a good chance of going first here and putting those Sentinels into something useful. Total 735 points, meaning we've got a good chance of getting that triumph, but not a guaranteed one. No reinforced units, no allies, 41 wounds, and as mentioned, a 1-drop army. If you're getting into Lumineth Realm Lords with the new edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, I'd love to know how you're going with them and what you've been doing. Let us know in the comments below. Well, that's the end of the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you'd like to, you can come over and chat more with us here at Sinful Gaming and our fine little community over on Discord. You'll find a link to that Discord in the description of the video. Lastly, we'd like to give a shout out to everyone who helps support the channel via Patreon and YouTube members. And if you'd like to help support the channel via Patreon or YouTube members, you can do so by one of the links in the video's description once again. But a special shout out to all our patrons: Christian Weir, James, Soren, Chaos Spawn, AJC, Kenny Lyle, Outer and Shop First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Q Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, and Dynat226. And another special shout out to our YouTube members: Greenridge Gaming, Kenton Young, Steve T, The Real Zeop, Chris Wallace, Turo12, Vinny, Lock Lorick, Matt Mollin, Becca Kinski Groupie, and the Johnny84. And lastly, a definite special shout out, first of all, to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork for the channel, and to Xmorphic, who does all the background work for our Discord server, keeping everything there running smoothly, because I am completely computer illiterate. Thank you very much. But that's it for the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe again. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.